My story is one that blurs the line between the tangible world of abuse and the intangible realm of the paranormal. It all started when I was 19, beginning a relationship with a man I'll call G. From the very start, an ominous feeling hung over me like a dark cloud. The night before G was set to pick me up, I experienced an intense sense of impending doom. If only I had listened to that warning. As we settled into our relationship, strange occurrences began to plague me. For the first time in my life, I started experiencing sleep paralysis. It felt like my entire body was tingling, similar to when a limb goes numb, but I couldn't move. All I could do was breathe heavily, hoping G would notice and wake me up. He never did. We moved into his parents' basement, and that's when the truly inexplicable events began. One morning while running on the treadmill, I saw a shadow that looked like a little boy scurry across my path and disappear. I tried to rationalize it, but the image was so clear, so head-on, that it was hard to dismiss. The paranormal activities escalated. One night, as G slept beside me, I heard footsteps walking from the hallway to the kitchen above our room. This pattern repeated for 35 to 40 minutes. When I asked G's mom about it the next day, she insisted they had been sound asleep. On another occasion, I heard a muffled conversation between two men in the kitchen for about 40 minutes. When I went to check, no one was there. As these unexplainable events unfolded, G's behavior became increasingly abusive. His anger reached new heights, and he even put his hands on me. When we finally moved into our own place, the paranormal activity followed. I'd hear toys going off in my stepson's room when no one was there. Every time I entered the house alone, I felt unwelcome, as if some malevolent presence had followed us. During a camping trip where I took shrooms, I had an intense experience that I can't explain away. A voice in my head repeatedly urged me to promise to break up with G, warning that he would destroy me. It was the most intense thing I've ever experienced, and it left me shaken. As time went on, my body seemed to revolt against G's very presence. When he kissed me, I felt physically ill. It wasn't just a mental reaction. My entire being seemed repulsed by him. Looking back, I realized my body was trying to tell me something was deeply wrong. The horror of my situation came to light in the most devastating way possible. G was arrested for viewing images and videos of children being sexually assaulted. The revelation sent me into a complete mental breakdown. Suddenly, all the gut feelings, the physical revulsion, the paranormal warnings, it all made sense. Interestingly, after leaving G, most of my paranormal experiences ceased. The sleep paralysis stopped entirely. I've only had 2 minor incidents since then, neither of which felt threatening. It's as if whatever forces were at work were trying to warn me about the true nature of my abusive partner. My journey through the depths of abusive relationships spans 12 harrowing years. It all began when I was just 17, falling for a 22-year-old man named Joe. What started as a seemingly passionate romance quickly devolved into a nightmare of physical abuse, rape, and emotional manipulation. Joe convinced me to drop out of high school and move in with him, effectively isolating me from my family and friends. He beat me, raped me, and constantly told me that my family hated me. I was working over 40 hours a week while he refused to work, even faking a back injury to avoid employment. After 2 years of this hell, I finally found the strength to leave him and move back home. But my ordeal was far from over. Enter Scott, the man who would become the real monster of my story. I met him when I was 19 and he was 20. At first, Scott seemed like a knight in shining armor. He knew about my abusive ex and even told Joe he'd beat him if he ever caught him hurting me again. For 3 months, everything seemed perfect. Then the mask slipped. Scott never physically abused me, but he weaponized my PTSD from past traumas to control me. He would yell and throw things when I didn't comply with his demands. I wasn't allowed to have my own opinions, to be smart, or to have any friends. When I found a job, he quit his. I was often so poor that most nights we didn't eat, but he always made me give him my entire paycheck to buy weed. Over 4 years, Scott manipulated me financially. I bought a house, several cars, and even 2 motorcycles, all in his name. I was working 7 days a week, hating my job, but clinging to the stability it provided. When I got into a highly regarded CNA program and finished at the top of my class, Scott threatened to make me lose my current job if I took a second one. I now realize he feared I'd meet new people and understand I could do better without him. The betrayal cut even deeper when I discovered Scott was having an affair with my best friend Marie. They had sex right outside the bedroom where I was sleeping, in the house I was paying for. This led to our breakup, sending me to a spiral of depression and alcoholism. For months, I drank about half a gallon of whiskey every day, but the most chilling part of this story came after our relationship ended. Scott married another woman named Renee and had 2 children with her. When Renee asked for a divorce, Scott's reaction was nothing short of monstrous. He tied up her dog with barbed wire and put it in the shed. He locked her other pets in the house. Then he set both the shed and the house on fire. This act of unimaginable cruelty made me realize how close I had come to potential death. I remembered all the time Scott had talked about wanting to know what it was like to watch the life leave someone's eyes. The venom he held in his heart was finally unleashed, and I shuddered to think what might have happened if I had stayed. Today I live with constant paranoia. I have a permit to carry, own 2 handguns, and I'm always hyper-vigilant of my surroundings. I was only 18 when I received that fateful message from David Clark on Facebook. His "hey" with a smiley face seemed innocent enough, but little did I know it would lead me down a path of manipulation and abuse. I had a crush on him when I was 15, but he'd stopped talking to me then due to our age difference. Now freshly heartbroken from an unfaithful boyfriend, I decided to give David a chance. When he offered to pick me up from Casper and bring me to Rock Springs, Wyoming, I felt excited, but as we drove back to his place, an unexplainable feeling washed over me. I should have listened to my gut. The first red flag appeared almost immediately. At his house, David started showing me gory videos online. It was weird and unsettling, but I brushed it off, chalking it up to different interests. Looking back, I realized how naive I was. As weeks turned into months, David's true colors began to show. His demeanor changed drastically. Random outbursts over trivial matters became common. He suggested we'd start swinging, and despite my hesitation, I agreed. I was walking on eggshells, afraid to make even the smallest mistake. The control he exerted over me was suffocating. I later discovered he had hacked into all my social media accounts and email, changing passwords to monitor my every move. He isolated me from my family and friends, cutting off my support system. The abuse intensified when we moved into our own place. Arguments became a daily occurrence, often lasting from morning until night. I remember one particularly horrifying incident in the kitchen. He shoved me into the bedroom, wrapped his hand around my throat, and screamed in my face. And when I started crying, he had the audacity to say he needed to leave because he'd never put his hands on a woman before. Sex became another weapon in his arsenal of control. He demanded it daily, sometimes multiple times a day. If I wasn't in the mood, especially when he wanted to involve other people, it would lead to explosive arguments. The situation reached a terrifying climax during one of our fights. David pulled out a gun. My heart stopped as he put it to his head, then in his mouth, acting as if he might pull the trigger at any moment. I was paralyzed with fear, realizing just how unstable and dangerous he truly was. But the worst was yet to come. One day, I received a call from my coworker. David had been arrested on 14 counts of child pornography. The world crumbled around me. I felt physically sick, barely able to comprehend the magnitude of his depravity. When he called from jail, he had the audacity to ask me to wait for him. I was disgusted and heartbroken. In the aftermath, I learned he had been talking to and exchanging photos with underage girls. The man I thought I knew was a monster hiding in plain sight. It took me a long time to recover from this traumatic experience, but it taught me an invaluable lesson. Always trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is.